public concern is not as much.
Well, I didn't say it wasn't needed, just that was some of the emerging data.
Right. Oh no, but I'm saying that
yeah.
we're thinking one wipe per kid for, like a kid comes in and wipes down. I know that there's many other possibilities here, but
right. Yeah. So we're thinking of maybe one, but we're waiting for that. I know that our board of health members, the chair has talked to me about that, and he's looking at some research around that. But we've had weekly meetings with the commissioner the last 3 months or whatever, and he's been hinting the last couple of meetings that there may be some additional guidance from the medical team of DESE and the state that comes out with that, and we're still waiting on the guidance around transportation as well. So the third thing around the cleaning piece that we're waiting for is the Wednesday deep cleaning. So we're starting. There's starting to be some information coming out about that may not be necessary, but we have not gotten any clear science on that. But the commissioner has hinted to that to us the last couple of meetings, and we're waiting to hear some. Again, we hear about guidance coming the next couple of weeks. When we get it, we get it. But that may be something that we'll be looking at in the near future.
So, and I it might be fast forwarding too much, but so just if we assume same course and speed, Michael, as you make these additional costs, from the grant, like, does that get us to March? Like, do we have any set assessment? Like, I wonder, okay, those 200,000 wipes or whatever they are gets us till March, and then there is no grant come then, and we'd have to find it elsewhere. Or I'm just curious, like, what's the general assumption of what that buys us?
So we're going through the middle school and high school is going through 80,000 wipes per month.
Okay.
So 40,000 wipes per school. Yeah. So so you're going to say, well, why are we spending all this money on all this PPE? There's two reasons. One is there's a state mandate on some of this, and the second one is our MOA requires that we have certain PPEs provided for staff and students. So
yeah, and I wasn't asking. I was more just asking is, okay, so that might get us till March. I was more just thinking about.
That really does look like it's going to get us to what, January?
So
sorry, I'm not. Yeah, not even that. Yeah,
so
it'll get us through December 31st.
December 30th, because the way the grant is written is that what you submit has to actually be used during that time frame. It's just the way it's written. So if I wanted to turn around and use, and try to buy, as much as I could and try to stock it up, it's not meeting the guidelines of the grant.
Okay.
Wow.
So
we really thought this vaccine thing was going to work, huh?
So the takeaway though is, all right, provided there's not another grant, there's going to be a pretty big hole. Like, we're going to continue to have this expense.
Yeah, and Tim, we'll see that as we go down.
Yeah, we'll see that soon.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So,
good.
So masks, right now we spent $3,374.87, but I didn't budget any in through the Grant 102 because that's coming out of the CARES Act, and you'll see that in a second. So when I say cleaning supplies, that's the disinfectant solution that we're using, and we purchase 55-gallon drums. So each drum is 55 gallons. The cost of a drum is about $858 or $859. Right now, we are going through one drum per school per month. So you're going to be seeing that as we move down.
I mean, I think the thing that people need to recognize too is that, to Michael's point about going through one drum, all day long we are going through. So we're hitting high touch areas. When the kids are in the classroom, we're spraying the bathrooms all the time. So it's a nonstop process. And I think that's, one of the things that we're looking at is, we have been, some people may say we're over the top on this, but I think we've been doing a really good job with, keeping kids safe, keeping staff safe. And, but there's a cost to it. And I think that's what, you're going to see as we go through this.
So the filters are the MARV 13s, and the MARV 8 filters. So the 9,000 is for we will be replacing all of our filters in November. So we're going through a specific routine that was set in our reopening plan. So the cost is $9,000 just to replace those.
So we'll do that twice again.
Yep. So that's 2
This
more
school
times.
year at least. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So the HVAC repairs, those are, and what we mean by repairs, what we did was we brought 2 different consultants in, Train and another engineering company, and we had them go through all of our systems district-wide, and looking at timing belts and looking at motors and tweaking things. So we did that all between the months of July and September. We still keep calling them MAC, so they're on a contract with us that anytime we need them, they come and they review the HVAC systems. So that cost was $33,698.52. We bought the air purifiers for both Dale Street and Wheelock. That was a cost of $44,290.
And we purchased those for those 2 schools because they don't have HVAC systems.
Correct.
Yeah.
So where I say IT, you can see we spent about only $2,700 in IT through this grant, and those were for, speakers, cameras, any type of hardware that we needed to help the teachers in their classrooms. You're going to see there's an outstanding number of $96,953. Out of that $96,953, $24,000 is for the remote courses that the high school and middle school students are taking through TECA. So that's about $24,000. And then the remaining amount are Chromebooks that we ordered back in, I want to say July, Jeff. And they, and as you know, we're not the only district, but across the country, they're still behind and, in delivering these Chromebooks. So we purchased the Chrome, we put the order in for the Chromebooks. We haven't paid for them yet because they haven't delivered them yet. And Leo, you're probably going through it in other districts. So once we receive those Chromebooks, then we can pay for that invoice. What we need to happen though, and I want to be as clear as I can, those Chromebooks have to be delivered before December 30th in order for me to pay for them. If they come after December 30th, even though they were ordered July 1st, I cannot use this grant to pay for those Chromebooks.
How many do we have outstanding?
I want to say, and don't quote me, I believe it's about 300, right? About 300.
And these are for student use?
These are for students.
These are, yeah,
So
because we
75,000 or so.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. It's 75,000. Yeah.
So I mean, that's, we do have to get them. And we're talking about. So that HP order the state put forward actually came in ahead of time, and all the vendors. I feel bad because a lot of their VARs, whoever we used, I don't know whoever we used. Probably were told by HP they would be able to get them, so they didn't take advantage of that state deal. But the state ones did show up at the end of September.
Yeah, I would say the models that we got are a little bit better than the state ones.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, so we ordered the ones that that Owen does through CDW. Owen, is that what it is? And they're due the second or third week of this month. So we should be good. We should be good.
Should be good.
When we get them, where do they go?
And they've been great. I mean, they've been really good with our order that we did for MacBooks for the teachers out of the CARES Act. I mean, they've been really good. So
they're a long time vendor, right?
Yeah, it behooves them to get the order out because they don't get paid till it gets delivered. So
right.
Yeah, and if they want to get it in this fiscal year for them, they want to get it done now. So
I would just go back to one thing too about the TECA. So as you know, we have a cohort D. Those families who want their students to be remote, fully remote, and not in the hybrid model or any in-person model. So we did it in-house K-8, which means we we have staff that are our own staff working with those students, but because of the complexity of a high school schedule and the need to individualize that, the DESE has a contract with TECA, which is an online school, and we purchased certain amount of courses for those particular kids because of the complexity of an individuality of a high school schedule. So our high school kids that are cohort D, which are not a lot of them, are in TECA, and then the rest of our K-8 students we're doing in-house.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I would say that we've met with the state, we meaning the Superintendent's Association, and just reminding them that that was an unfunded mandate, really, the cohort D, across. So we have a situation where our cohort D is under 125 kids right now, but you look at other districts such as Needham and Wellesley, and even close by in Medway. I think Needham and Wellesley, each one of their cohort Ds are 500 to 600, and I know Medway is over 250. So we did a good job with that. I think that we're providing a great education to those kids for that choose to do that. But we were somewhat fortunate in the sense of an unfunded mandate that we only had to provide for the 125 versus the over 300, 400, 500 other districts are doing.
Jeff, was that a one-time lump sum that you had to pay, or is that going to be ongoing?
It's by semester. So they broke it
Okay.
up by semester. So we have a bill for first semester, and then another one will come in after that.
And so that second semester, obviously, can you
Will be
pay
another
it before
25K.
December 30th, or
Well,
is that?
one of the things that I guess one of the real good benefits of being a member of TEC, which is associated with TECA, is that we get a percentage of free courses through TEC because we're a TEC district. So we're going to apply some of those free courses so that it won't be another bill of 23 or whatever thousand it is.
Okay. I guess my bottom line question was that, would that be covered by this grant, that second semester?
It wouldn't be, no.
But
Okay.
he's saying it's a sunk cost already, so we're okay, I think is what he's saying.
23,000 is for the first half of the year.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we'll have, like I said, we will have some free courses in that. The entire thing won't be free, but it won't be the high number that is for the semester.
Yes,
And for the 300 Chromebooks, when we get them, where do we distribute them? Who's waiting for them?
So what we had to do was use all of the Chromebooks that are earmarked for MCAS. Those are the ones we had to give out for families because that's the only Chromebooks we had at the time. So we're going to be doing some switching out and using some for MCAS. So it's going to be a twofold process.
Okay.
Just want to say unfunded mandate again.
Yeah, another one. Yep.
Mhm. So under other, and I'm going to show you that spreadsheet, you're going to see projected cost of 15,000. In that 15,000, there's $10,000 for translation of any type of documents that we have. So during COVID, because of the number of documents have increased, we couldn't support it through our operational costs, so we put it through the 102 grant. So any translation for any type of documents is coming out of for COVID-related documents is coming out of this grant. And then we have, I believe, another $5,000 in the grant for student services if it, needs for testing. And then there's
That's
what we
not a
call
lot. Yeah.
and then what we call the one-time cost. So I'm going to go to where I say grant 102. So under this is all the invoices that we have already submitted to the state. So they audit us on a quarterly basis, which is obviously going to be, right now they're doing September, October. No, they're doing July, August, and September, and then they're going to do October, November, and December, the second round. So if you look at the top part where it says one-time COVID payments, these were the one-time COVID payments that we had that equaled $104,664. So again, we had an HVAC system when Train came out in the air quality testing. So that air quality testing was, a portion of it was charged to this grant. The next one was we ordered medical tents, and we had to order cots for each school to put into the medical tent. So that $513 was for the cots that were in that are in the medical tents. One-time cost, there was labels for disinfectant, so we had to label everything that we use, and there was an additional cost for that. We purchased the backpack sprayers for $8,700. That goes with the solution, the disinfectant solution that we're using daily. The 75 air purifiers, I just went over that with you guys. We bought 793 desk dividers for the elementary for a cost of $9,500.
And yeah, just Michael on that one, just because we've gotten some questions before on that. So the reason why we put them at the elementary and not K to 12 is that elementary students have their lunch in their classroom. So we wanted to make sure that obviously they can't have their mask on while they're having their lunch. So we wanted to make sure that we had an extra layer of protection for our students and staff with that.
That's right. And then the next line was 10 mask break tents. Those are the white tents that you see at the schools. That was $28,372. So, and Jeff can share the story with you. We're one of the few districts that actually purchased the tents. A lot of districts are renting them, and the cost to rent the tents are 4 times more than just purchasing a tent. So
Can we
felt that,
can we buy some more and rent them?
So
once COVID is over, Tim, we'll rent them for parties on the weekends.
Yeah.
So
We're going to need it.
So we just felt it was more cost effective to purchase them than rent them. Right now, you know, there's a district close by to us that between the months of September through December, they're paying, I believe, close to $300,000 in
400.
How much?
400.
400,000 in renting tents for the district. So we just felt that this was more cost-effective way of doing it. We also ordered, you're going to see what it's a one-time, we had to order hinges to repair all windows because we had to make sure that all windows can open in every school. So that was, again, a one-time purchase. And then I spoke about the webcams, the microphones and speakers. So that totaled that 104,000 that you saw on the other page. The bottom part of this,
Michael, just one second. Or is it 104 or 52 on the other page?
it's 104,664. So when I go back, I'll show you. It's broken down into 3 different line items. Tim.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael, you'll give us this spreadsheet as well when we're.
You're going to get
done.
the whole entire
Yeah,
document.
we're going to get the whole kit and caboodle.
And this is a running document because this is how we submit it to the state. So on the bottom part, these are the ongoing expenses. So we have one-time expenses, and then we have ongoing expenses, and those were all the other expenses that I highlighted on the other spreadsheet. So and like I said, you guys will have access to all this information. Okay.
Right.
All right. So if we go to where we have the CARES Act. So now the CARES Act was federal funding that came directly to the town, and then that was the town allocates a portion of that CARES Act to us. So what we tried to do is look at what we received from our side, the school side, the 102 grant, and then try to, work with the town to use different costs for, again, COVID to put through the CARES Act. So far, we purchased gloves through the CARES Act. As you can see, we're looking to purchase another 6,000 pairs of gloves, which is $831. So, our custodians are using gloves constantly. The nurses are using gloves constantly, and our food service department is using gloves constantly. So we're going through a lot of gloves. So we, because we put the hand sanitizer through, the second order is coming through the 102 grant. The first order for the hand sanitizer came through the CARES Act, and that was $57,000, $671. Disinfectant wipes, again, you saw that I put them in at the top and on the bottom because the cost is about, like we talked about between $24,000 and $23,000, depending on, as you can see here, this projection is, I think, 0.12, and up top was a 0.14 cents. It fluctuates depending on when we're purchasing these items. We are looking to purchase through this CARES Act another 11,000 masks. That's children's masks and adult masks. And then again, the cleaning supply, that's the disinfectant that we're using. We're looking to purchase 8 through the CARES Act here. And then again, we have other category and one-time expenses. So when I go onto the tab for the CARES Act, you're going to see where there's one-time COVID payments, which added up to, I believe, was 347,000, I believe.
Yeah, and the biggest one there too was we purchased our laptops through
yes, which is
through the CARES Act.
So if you look at this section right here that I'm going to highlight, you're going to see that those are the Apple
Repairs.
that we
For the teachers, right?
Yes.
teachers. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
So
we got-
that's 2 different expenses.
Mhm.
Right. We had a lot of feedback in the spring that teachers are having difficulty doing their Zoom meetings, et cetera. And we wanted to we talked to other districts that use MacBook Airs, and they really had no issues at all with Zoom. So it made sense to go in that direction for us.
I can vouch for that right now. Yeah. We have to double down with the school I'm working with right now for, to do that broadcasting piece. 1 Chromebook for the presentation, 1 Chromebook for the communication, because it just can't handle it, the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
So.
So again, I'm going to share all these spreadsheets. You're going to be able to go through them. You're going to see what we purchased, the day that we paid it, where this resource was, where the source that the funding source that we used. Okay, and then the bottom part is the operational. This is what's currently either it came out of our budget or it will be coming out of our budget, and we're trying to project that as we move forward. So due to COVID and for students going remote and the different situations that we've had in the District of Medfield, we had to hire 10.3 teachers. And that's a biweekly cost of $18,943.36.
So
And
some of that, just to be clear, some of that is increasing the roles of teachers that we already had in district.
yes,
Like for instance, if someone was a 0.7 teacher, but could support cohort D, then we may have made them full-time at that point. Or if we had some special education staff that were part-time that we needed services to do remote or services in different cohort, we extended their employment to be full-time. So it's not like 10.3 bodies, but that's what the FTE comes out to be.
yes, and then and we'll be more than happy to continue to share all that information with you. So the cost, from now. So if you look to my right, where it says the 50.
Michael, sorry to bring backwards. Is there any, when you're doing like teachers that are added due to COVID, does it have to come out of operational, or is there, like, you have custodial, you have nurses, is there any benefit?
Yeah, so Tim, thank you for asking that. So both myself and Jeff have wanted to make a recommendation to the school committee, because these are all, the teachers and the TAs are all COVID related, and we can prove that they're COVID related expenses, which means that we would have never had these costs if it wasn't for COVID. They do qualify under the CARES Act. So Jeff and I were going to make a recommendation to the school committee to take the expenses for the months. So if you look here to my right, where it says 50,332, that was the salary that we paid for the month of September. So we had 2 payrolls in September and 1, I believe, in October. The other ones have not been posted downstairs. So I didn't want to put anything that hasn't been posted on our financial software, because then it just wouldn't look correct. So what we wanted to make, the recommendation we wanted to make to the school committee, is that we take all of those expenses for September, October, November, and December and move them to the CARES Act, or submit them to the town.
Yeah.
We'll submit them to the town to see if they would approve those costs to be paid through the CARES Act. But that's something that Jeff and I would have to talk to the town administrator with, and we should get your thoughts on it, and it's easy for us to go down. Right now, we're only paying for any type that's any PPE kind of materials, but we haven't yet submitted for any type of payroll.
Is there any reason you can't?
Right, that was my question. What would be the difference between
What
it
bad
being
thing-
a human being
like my brain.
versus a mask? It's still COVID. It's a relation to the pandemic. Would there be any reason why it would be rejected?
No, and that's kind of what we think too. I mean, we feel like it qualifies based on the CARES Act criteria, so it makes sense. We wouldn't have hired any of these people without COVID. So
Well, and the point of the matter being, what CARES Act was $1 million?
there's $1 million, I think.
1.2.
So we have a bunch of money left over right now, right? That we need to use?
Hey, I don't know what the town's chunk of that has been so far, what they've burned through.
Okay,
I don't know, honestly, no. So
but if we've used what, 400?
438.
We've
So
used
that would leave-
yeah.
I don't think they've burned through 600,000-ish, but I don't know.
but we have to talk. Yeah.
I mean, that's something we can find out when we have that conversation. I think we should
Okay.
probably, if you guys think it's a good idea, we'll have that conversation.
I just don't
Well,
want to,
yeah.
I definitely don't want to leave money on the table that,
Yeah.
Right.
But my other concern is that's kind of a high wire act, in that if we don't get those expenses cleared through the CARES Act, which can be, in my understanding is that the approval process can be a little rough
The approval within the town, or does it go elsewhere?
when it goes elsewhere, right? If we don't get that approved, then we're just kind of,
In the same spot we're at now, basically.
Correct.
yeah.
I
Right.
guess
You
you're
don't know
right,
if you
yeah.
don't ask,
Yeah,
right? You don't know if you don't
Reminds
ask.
me of a book I had when I was a kid. Could
So
be worse.
what happens is we pay it through our operational.
Yeah.
We submit it to the town submits it first to FEMA. And FEMA first looks at the first 75% of the cost. They then, so when we send it to them, we send it with a justification behind why, and we
Mhm.
can justify it. And then if FEMA approves the 75%, then the second portion, which is the 25% that's left, goes towards the CARES Act. And then once that's approved, then the town accountant would reimburse our operational cost for what has been approved. So we have to continue to put it through operations, but
Mhm.
then there's a process where we get refunded back from
Okay.
the other side.
Okay, so the machinations around that are a little convoluted, but
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know, if you bring it to me, it seems like it would be a good idea. Right? I don't know
Yeah.
if formally you have to, if I need to make a motion, I would support, but to me,
We don't make motions in workshops. That's, this is really a time for us to just be thinking about these things. So,
You can
Michael,
certainly give us feedback.
yeah, when do you think we would be, when would you like to present this or put this on an agenda, if that were something at the end of this discussion we felt should come? When do you need
Well, I think if we
to
talked
start
about
thinking
it,
about it?
if Michael and I had that conversation before next Thursday, we could probably put it on a Thursday.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
But
All right, so let's make sure that, let's put a pin in that and come back to it. And then let's let Michael get through the rest of his,
I think Anna Mae has a comment.
oh, Anna Mae, are you there? Hey.
I am here. Hi. So Michael and Jeff, so I suppose I'm not getting why it wasn't originally put on, put under the CARES Act. Was there a criteria within CARES that did not include humans? Or,
No, so originally, what we were told was to anything like PPE, any type of supplies, or hardware such as the apples we purchased, were stuff that were being processed. But just looking at it and reading the CARES Act, we feel, Jeff and I feel, that this meets the requirements. We just haven't pursued it with the town quite yet. We wanted to get your opinion on it, and then Jeff and I will have that conversation with the town administrator. We just feel that, the town got 1.2 million. We've spent about 438,000. We're projecting to spend another 36,000, which brings us less than $500,000. We think that the town is probably, maybe they're spending $500,000, but I doubt that they're at $500,000. So we feel that there's money available, and they have to spend this money by December 30th. And this would be a good way to I think, allocate these type of fundings, knowing that if the town doesn't spend it, they lose it.
Yeah, and to be honest, we talk to our colleagues all the time, and this is happening in other districts in town. So they're using CARES Act to fund personnel. So I think that's why we want to pursue that and wanted to get your opinion on it first.
Yeah, no brainer. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, it sounds reasonable.
So the
yeah.
second line is TAs. We hired about, it says 10.8 FTEs, but a lot of the TAs that we've hired are either 0.4s or 0.5s or 0.6, depending on the TA and what they're willing to work. So that's a biweekly cost of about $10,000. We're projecting. So all the projections you see here, which is, is what we think the cost is going to be from now till the end of the year. Okay, so that's about 100.
So the extra TAs, just to give you the background on that again. I know we talked about it at other meetings, but extra TAs are really looking at a couple of things. One is having a substitute teacher that's available, that's in the building, so we're not bringing outside people in to substitute. Right, we've been very cautious about that. We want to make sure that our protocols, we're not having visitors in the building. So if we have folks that are already in the building working with our students, then we can pull them as needed. Because of recess and other things that have to be spread out more, lunch has to be spread out in the classrooms, especially the elementary level. You need more bodies to do that work. So, that was the thinking around that is making sure that we had enough coverage to make it safe for kids. But we couldn't open without those people. We need to have extra people in those roles.
Mm-hmm.
And just so I understand, the Grant 102 must be used and deployed by the end of the year. Is the CARES Act the same requirement? Because
Yes.
you're showing the whatever the one, I gotta put my glasses back on, the 191. You're saying that's through the fiscal year? Is that right?
No, calendar
No,
year.
that's through December.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So I think that.
So essentially, I think what we're talking about here is that there's a huge cliff that happens on December 30th for us, in which our expenses continue to be able to keep kids in school and safe, and our funding runs out. And how does that, how do we manage that and work that out
Yeah.
within the
Yeah, the
resources
first
that we
step is
have?
to get some of it into the CARES Act.
Yeah. So Jess, so what if you look at this column J?
Right.
What we're saying in column J is this is what your monthly expense is going to be starting January 1st.
Right.
So starting
COVID related
January-
specific.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
starting January 1st, you're going to have an additional $182,000 of expenses that you're going to carry from January 1st through June 30th. Okay, so these numbers here show you what the last
Right.
6 months of that school year is going to look like, because
Mhm.
we're saying we have these two other options right now that are helping us.
Right.
But once that ends, we're adding these costs to our budget.
And let's remember, you heard from me, for months now, or about that second wave of stimulus, right? So we've been told that, and then it was dead in the water. So I think,
Right.
depending on what happens in the next 24 to 48 hours, with those counting of the votes, we may have a second stimulus coming. We just don't know that yet, and we can't plan for that. But we really, I think all of us anticipated a second stimulus coming, and some of it going directly to schools, and then that was just stopped. So
Right.
we'll see what
And
happens.
the House Ways and Means today at the state level started to talk about a second kind of stimulus on their level, but it was going to be specifically targeted towards lower income districts. Is that what you guys have heard as well? I was just scanning through.
So yeah, we haven't
Denise's
heard that
Twitter.
because I think what they use again is that Title I mechanism, right, for funding. So
Mhm.
if the state ends up using that federal mechanism, then we're not going to do well. So
But we get nothing. Yeah.
we're hoping that the second stimulus that comes out is done in an allocation to the district, and not to the state. Because if it goes to the state directly, then we're going to be in a situation where we're not going to get much. Like, for instance, that first wave that came out where people were getting additional funds, we got 20,000, when this first
Right.
started, and other people were getting, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if it's something that happens like what Obama did back in that recession in 08, 09, those fiscal years, if it happens that way, that'll be the best for school districts, because we got
That'd
direct
be amazing.
direct payment. So we were able to, save a zillion jobs back then because of that. If it happens differently, then it may not be as good as that. So.
So what I want to say, Jess, is you're looking at that total operational cost of about a little bit over $1 million.
Right.
Right. So that's what, and all these numbers could change. And you're saying, well, how could they change? Well, if we get another federal stimulus, that's going to help, right? If the governor closes the state down and we have to go now back to remote, again, that's going to put us in a different situation. We're going to have to make certain decisions about, staffing and moving forward, right?
But I don't really see us shutting down quite in the same way that we shut down last year, if it does happen. I mean, I think that people are, and so it ends up being kind of more of these kind of quick pivot to kind of control. I mean, things would have to get very, very, very bad for us to be able to shut down this time around. I'm not saying it won't. I'm not saying, but we don't know that will happen. And we don't know that those expenses wouldn't literally just need to be carried for that month. You don't fire or, furlough people or kind of change all of your entire model
I agree.
simply for a month. I mean, it's foolhardy, although you do have to make adjustments and, but at the same time.
So what I'm saying, Jess, is we're not
Yeah.
going to probably need all the disinfectant and hand sanitizer. And there's a lot that goes into it, that this cost that's associated with it.
No, I totally get that. I always think of bodies. I guess I don't think so much about sanitizer.
Yeah.
But I should, because they're both equally intense expenses right now.
It helps you keep your sanity.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to say is that these numbers are going to fluctuate because you can't predict what the future is going to look like, right?
But there's a level of supply inertia happening right now in terms of the amount of money that it costs to get some of these supplies. That some of it is that there's issues around the supply chain, but there's also just that this is a beautiful time to be a manufacturer of decent hand sanitizer. It's the cost continues to go up based on the market.
So and it does. So so Jeff and I had this conversation earlier when we both got here. We would do these monthly reports to the school committee on like a budget versus actual, and then they didn't want them anymore after I don't know, Jeff, you could probably answer.
Yeah,
that
I mean,
question.
I would say that when I first got here 8 years ago, we were doing them every month, I would say, and then Michael transitioned right after that, and we did, I think, your first year, Michael, and then we're told it wasn't really as necessary. So we're very happy to go back to.
I would be very happy to have that happen.
Yeah, the monthly budget versus actuals, and we have a pretty good model. I mean, I used one in Rentham, and Michael used one in Dedham, and I think this model that the sample Michael will show with you it's pretty clear cut and easy. Maybe you can hit on that. Jeff.
Yeah. So I want to show. So this is a sample workbook, which would probably. So what we would do is we would provide this to you monthly. And it breaks it down into the two categories, personnel and non-personnel, and then it breaks it down into what the DESE functions are, which is instructional services, which is your teachers, your student support services, operations, and then administration. And then it breaks the next non-personnel into the major categories also. The first column, which is what your typical year expense would look like. So, for example, July through October, for instructional services, you should be at 19% of your budget already expended, right?
Mhm.
And so you take your budget, what your budget is for the year, right? You look at your actuals. It's what you actually spent between the months of July and October. And then you get your actual expended amount, which is 22%. So you
Right.
would see in that category that you're over budgeted for that month between the 19% and the 22%, which is not that
Okay.
much, right?
Right.
So
And
this
these
is
are just fictional numbers that we're using right
yeah,
now.
the-
Right,
we're
right.
just-
Nobody get
I'm
excited.
just giving you a sample. So at the end, you would look at your subtotal for personnel and say, okay, we should be at about 25% of that 30 million. We're at 25%, so we're on target, okay?
Mhm.
All this information is fed through, and I'm going to just show you. So for example, this is our non-personnel. You've probably seen this.
Right.
This comes,
Oh, yeah.
it's a Munis report that I make it work for us, right? So I take the data from here and I feed it into that summary sheet, okay? And then this becomes your a workbook for you guys. So if
Mhm.
you wanted more detail on, okay, why is the operations, I'm just picking one, 35% when it's 31%, you can go into the workbooks and actually find it because I break it down by categories. So it's the same categories. If you see it, it's the same categories that you're going to see on your summary page. And then you can go, you want to go deep into it, you can go deep into it and see where we're actually spending and what lines we're spending from.
Oh, Michael, I'm willing to please throw it out to the rest of the committee, but I personally think this is fantastic. I very much like to see this once a month, and it's obviously, I mean, we
it's
keep
the-
on top of it, but
Yeah, it's the internal documents that we have anyway that we're always looking
Yeah.
at. So it makes sense
yeah,
to,
to be able to have access to it on a pretty consistent, easy basis would be great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so we, at this point, can look at the monthly projected cost for COVID and we can then tie them back into that budget versus actual and see how off we are or, what's going on. And those are things that we can talk about in those monthly reports.
Right,
I-
great.
Yeah, I would look at that as, one, I love it. It keeps us, on top of things, but yeah, maybe even you have the, CARES Acts or any kind of stimulus in that, if just the netting it out, if you were to add to it as well.
Mm-hmm. So we can, again, we're just pulling data. We do this internal. We never stop doing it, even though the school
Right.
committee didn't request for it. So because we always, I want to know, and Jeff wants to know, on a monthly basis where we are, right? You never want to catch anyone by surprise that we're over budget. So we have been doing it, but I just feel that we know we're going to go over budget if we don't get any extra funding, that it's important to show it and it's important to see where those expenses are coming from and why.
Okay.
Do you
So-
need us to formally ask you to do that, or is it understood that
no,
that's
no,
something
I-
that we want?
we got it.
Okay,
I think
thank
we
you.
just put it in the agenda monthly.
Yep.
Definitely.
So, and Michael, just before you leave that monthly projected cost, I had one other question. But I don't, unless there's any reason to stay here.
Oh, no, you want me to go back to the monthly? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, if there is potential, if I'm looking at column F, I mean, are many of those rows that we could potentially put into the CARES Act?
Yeah, so right now, the nurses and custodians is in that 102. So this portion here that you see, I'm gonna highlight. Can you see me highlight that?
Yes.
Yep.
That cost is from January through June. Now, you could turn around and say, ask Jeff and I and say, okay, can you give us an analysis? Do we need to continue to have nurses January to June? What did they do? What was the type of workload that they had? And you might turn around to us and say, you know what, maybe we don't need 2.6 FTEs. Maybe we only need 1.5 FTEs. This is just an example.
Right.
Then we can, look at that, evaluate that, And then if you guys decide that we need to take it down, we reduce it in that area. For example, like the custodians, we have 3.4. If the state tells us, well, there's no need to do deep cleaning because there's no statistics that show that deep cleaning is actually helping the cause, you might turn around and say, you know what, we don't need all those custodians, in the months of January through June, we can then pretty much get rid of our per diem custodians, and then that cost goes away. So those are things that we just have to continue to evaluate. The teachers and TA is the area that, Tim, that I would ask to put into the CARES Act, because the rest of it, like if you look at the kindergarten revolving for teachers, and the kindergarten revolving for TAs, we're going to just take the first 5 months, pay the first 5 months out of the revolving account. It's the second 5 months that we would have to move to either to the operational cost. And the reason why we can afford to pay for those teachers out of that revolving account for September through, call it December, right? It's when we move, or December through, and as we move forward, because we're only accepting half of the tuition right now, we will not be able to pay for those expenses out of the revolving account, unless it changes, right? We go back.
We change the model. We change the
Yeah.
model, full day K, and then things change. So
Then absolutely things will change. But right now we're only receiving half of the tuition from parents. So we would be in the hole. I can tell you exactly. We would be in the hole 253,000. I think when I told you originally was 250,000, we're 253,000 in the hole if we don't move it into an operational account.
All right. So I think we're all agreed that we would very much like to have that monthly accounting. Tim, you said yes. Megan, you were pretty excited about it. Anna Mae, Leo, you're in agreement.
Oh, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
I think
Where
with
did they
this
go?
year, yeah, absolutely, yeah. If it's
Yeah.
not a huge,
And I can see going
lift,
forward.
So,
Yeah.
I know how difficult it is to use Munis too. So you have to, give Michael some. Because it's municipal financial packages are you take mediocre and then you go a few steps down and then you get those.
well, I would say, however, Leo, but when I got here, the school department was using a different software than Munis, and that was really bad because the town and the school department couldn't talk to each other financially. So
Great.
that was interesting. A couple of years before we hopped on to Munis and got that going and got everyone trained. But
We were also using triplicate forms and typewriters. This is in many aspects, right?
Right.
So going forward,
pink, blue, green, yellow. Yeah.
So going forward, what Jeff and I will present to you is the monthly projected cost for COVID expenses. So
Okay.
the spreadsheet here, okay? We're going to also present the budget versus actual, and then we're going to provide you with the personnel and non-personnel backup, and we can, because what we'll do at the actual school committee, and Jeff, tell me if you disagree, but we just, because of timing, we'll go through the budget versus actual, we'll go through the monthly projected cost for COVID, and then if you guys have any, questions on the other two spreadsheets, the personnel, non-personnel, we can, we can get back to you on those. It's just going through every single line item would be a lot.
Yes. And yeah. Okay.
This is really helpful and clear. Thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
the other piece, Jess, that you asked me for, you wanted a breakdown of non-personnel, non-union increases.
Yeah.
So you wanted a breakdown of that. So I know that Michael just put that in there, just so you could have it, take a look at it. We don't need to talk about it, whatever you want to do. But
Right.
It's one of the things that has come up, at least with meetings that I've had with non-union personnel about.
So just to kind of remind people, all of us obviously know this, but remind people who might be watching or on the warrant committee, all of our non-union personnel did not take their contracted raises, cost of living raises, so that they have remained essentially flat. But they are also the ones who have been working harder than they have ever worked over the last 6 months. I mean, we all have, but many of these folks have been working far beyond 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for months and months and months. So I think that, we had to really make some cuts, and given the fact that we had, we have contracts that we have to honor for our unionized employees. Unfortunately, the folks that ended up losing out were the ones who are not within that union or within the unions. So I understand, and we'll obviously take a look. But right now, the first thing is to just see where it's going to come from after. I mean, one of the most kind of concerning things about this is that we literally don't know anything about what will happen after December 30th. And we could get stimulus, we could not. Our tax revenues could plummet. Things could be much worse. We don't know.
Well, yeah, I look at that and I say, all right, there's the things we can control and the things we cannot control.
Of course.
It sounds like there may be some additional CARES Act dollars that we can control. So if we can reduce the operational budget that we're spending now, that could be, coming out of CARES Act, it would behoove us to try to do that at least now, between now and December, because that gives us more thereafter, after that money is gone.
Yeah.
That would be my.
I mean, obviously,
I can't. Hopefully, there will get stimulus, but it seems to me there's some dollars in there that we could recover.
And if that's working, and we really think that the town can help us kind of participate in that, and we're kind of able to get an understanding of where they are with their COVID spending, and make sure that we're being as equitable as possible.
And
I think we absolutely should. Yeah.
We're looking at the additional stimulus, and again, I don't want to be like a dinosaur, keep going back to 08, 09, but one of the good things about that particular the stimulus there is it was a situation that it allowed us to carry that over to another fiscal year the way they structured it. So for instance, if we were to get another stimulus now that would help us limp our way through FY21, there'd be if it's structured the way that our money was in 08, 09, it would allow you to apply some of that money to 22 as well, which would really be a godsend for us as well. So I think
because 22 promises to be actually maybe a little worse. So
very, very difficult again, and I think, I always make fun of the doom and gloom meeting, but these are legit the last couple of years. These are really difficult years where, if we had the stimulus money that we could carry over, like the ARA money back then, that would be really helpful for us.
Yeah. I in no way am I disagreeing with you, Tim. I think it is a no-brainer, like Anna Mae said. And we'll take that up at the next school committee meeting and put that on the agenda. And then we'll just make sure that we are watching budget numbers and staying on top of it monthly at the very least. Obviously, you always let us know when things are emergent anyway, but.
Right.
All right. Does anyone have questions, concerns, thoughts about any other portion of this right now? Jeff, is there anything else you want to tell us about this?
Well, I guess, the reason why we started off with kind of the process for FY21 and how, because that really does impact where we are right now, right? It really does. I have colleagues that that didn't have to reduce those funds, and that allowed incredible flexibility in what they can do right now during a hybrid model with bringing certain kids back if they have space, and that because they had additional positions in their FY21 budget, which they decided not to hire, and it allowed them to hire additional teachers and staff and all that. So it's all connected. I mean, we can't
Yeah.
just say, okay, the budget was here and now COVID hit and now we have this. This is all connected. So when you have a strong budget season and you are able to accomplish your budget goals as a school district, it gives you a lot of flexibility to do good things for kids. And we really didn't have that based on the cuts that we had. And now looking at our budget based on 10% cut in statewide Chapter 70, and now we know that's level funded, so that's additional money that's out there. So I think this is all connected, and it's important for everyone to get the whole picture of where we're at, because some of this is really due to the over $1 million we cut from our request in FY21.
So Jeff, can you talk to me a little bit about the specifics around Chapter 70? Because I think, Chapter 70 is something, it's a phrase that we throw around a lot, but it really is an enormously important part of how we fund our operational budget and our services for students, particularly our special needs students, that each district has essentially a cap that they, after that, are reimbursed. And we always hope that it comes at a certain level.
Yeah, so Chapter 70 really came out of ed reform in '93. And it's the mechanism that the state uses to fund schools. And they use the term to provide an adequate education, which is in the law. That's the term they use, which I've always had a problem with that term, adequate education. And it was really it was meant to level the playing field. So it came out of the Brockton School Committee that sued DESE because Brockton was not getting enough money. So they thought, they sued, they won. Ed reform began, that whole process. But what it did was it really widened the gap in communities that could afford it and couldn't, because it set up a net school spending that you have to spend in a school district per year. And I don't know many districts that are at net school spending. Everyone is well beyond net school spending, because what happened is, okay, here's the cap, here's the Chapter 70 money from the state, here's the local tax money, here's what we need. The local tax money, just like in Medfield, local tax money kicks in more and more and more, and you end up spending well beyond what you're required to spend, and every district does that. So
while state and federal funding over the last 20 years has also decreased significantly as we've gone, we are not getting the same amount of funding that might have been 20 or 25 years ago.
Well, not even
in a lot of ways. Actually,
probably 10 or 15 years ago. If I don't remember, you remember the spreadsheet I shared with you guys? It was last year or the year before, which showed that the amount of Chapter 70 money Medfield was getting, and then what we get now. So now we get a Chapter 70 increase of like $75,000. There were times in Medfield, by the way, when Medfield was still doing those overrides every single year. I know some people were living here. It was like 5 out of 7 years of overrides. Even with those overrides, they were getting over $500,000 increase year to year in Chapter 70. So that's gone way back. Obviously, 500,000, $500,000 increase to 75,000. So unfortunately, it's more on the backs of local taxpayers, and that's the problem, right? So you don't have a lot of industry here. It's really residential tax base that you have in Medfield, and that until that changes, that's going to be the issue for the town side and the school side forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is one of those years where it really, it's so many. One of the things I really like in the kind of warrant committee meetings that I've observed and over the last, couple of months, is that there really is becoming this idea of that we really are here together, that this, not only just this pandemic, but that we really do have to stop thinking about like it's schools versus town, that this is really just who we are, and this is what we value. And we also value, this place that we've chosen to live. This is our home. But we have these really hard financial choices that we have to make, and they're difficult. One of the things that gives me a little bit of hope for this kind of cliff that we could potentially fall off of if we don't get stimulus, if the kind of everything that should happen does not happen, coming out of this kind of national, international disaster, is that the town receives Chapter 70 money, right? So that does not come to the district, that
Does
comes
not.
directly to the town. And then town can put that, or traditionally, in fact, this is the first year that I've ever heard of it not happening, that money is traditionally just passed on to the school. But this year, it's extraordinary. No,
Yeah, it was really a timing thing.
nobody is.
Can you be more clear?
Is an
I'm
island.
confused. Can you be more clear? Like I
In
would,
what
and
way?
Michael, when you have that, what you just showed, right, if that sheet is up, I was gonna ask you to scroll down anyways, because your operational budget, we're like well over what we're expecting, right? If you scroll
So,
down.
Tim,
a little.
there was the Chapter 70 money, which is about, at this point, we've already had one disbursement, right? At this point,
It should be at
Michael?
least one. I'd have to
Okay.
double check. But the thing
But
is,
it's
with Chapter
about,
70, it's usually like under 7 million, in the district, right? So Medfield gets between 6 and 7 million. We don't get a ton of money. That's not considered a ton in Chapter 70. And really, the reason why it is the way it is this year isn't really COVID. It's the timing of everything, right? So if town meeting had happened in May and the state had gotten their act together and we had a budget when they typically do, then this wouldn't be an issue. The issue is that the state just finalized their budget, 3 weeks ago, and we had town meeting in the summer and budgets are all set. So it's really just an issue with the state, and the timing is the reason why Chapter 70 is kind of up in the air right now for the school department, because 10% more is coming in than we budgeted for in our budget because we didn't know. So
right.
it's not like, the town has always been great about making sure that all Chapter 70 is earmarked right to the schools. This is just a
Yeah.
timing issue right now.
This is, and we're having and I think that's generally the issues, that we're having a timing uncertainty and flexibility issue, right? That there's this inflexible portion of that we have to, spend this particular amount of money by December 30th. And then Chapter 70 comes in, but it doesn't necessarily get added to our bottom line. That Chapter 70, because of the way that we worked budgets and everything else this year and our timing, it would essentially kind of just replace other money that the town would have allocated to our budget. And what we're seeing here is that Chapter 70 money could very much help, at least in portion, to mitigate some of these kind of expenses that we may not have an ability to pay for by June, right? So that there may be a need for us. And I know that I've spoken to one of the selectmen, and I've spoken to other people, and I know, Jeff, you have too, where we may need to use some portion of whatever that Chapter 70 money is that would probably go into free cash to be able to cover these expenses that may not be covered by additional stimulus packages or anything like that. That it's, that this level of uncertainty, but we would have to work that kind of backwards, in a way. It's kind of one of those things where you never want to come to an annual town meeting and say, we overspent, we didn't plan right. But that's not this year. This year is extraordinary, and our flexibility and our hands are tied in a lot of ways. So we may end up having to really ask and work with the warrant committee to pursue an article around how do we fund what we have here?
Yeah,
How
Jess,
do we make this
that's
up?
what I was going to ask Michael or Jeff. I understand, I know it's complicated. I understand that because we had the town meeting and our budget was set, that you can't change the bottom line of the budget and the timing of it is the issue. And I feel like I'm the broken record that keeps harping on, in a normal time, that money would just be handed over,
Well, we would be able to like actually just, yes, in a normal time, it would be handed over, but we would also have been able to plan for it, right?
Well-
and so right now we just can't plan for it.
I just wonder if there's a way, and like you alluded to, working with the warrant committee and the selectmen, that obviously we can't officially transfer it with a town meeting, but is there some way to have access to it when we need it? And is that what you're suggesting with the free cash, or is this just a conversation that has to happen? I'm just trying to be very transparent and have
Yeah,
it
no,
so everyone knows. Obviously, the numbers are there. We're bleeding. And this is money that, although we didn't budget for it, we were conservative by saying 10% less, it came. I think that us having the town meeting in the summer instead of doing the 1/12 budgets that we thought maybe we were going to have to do was better. But I don't know if we had done that, if we were not be in this predicament. I guess I don't really know what my question is, except that can we have access to that, or do we need to have something written in some agreement, something, that's, I don't know.
no, I understand what you're saying. It's the uncertainty of what our options are, right?
Correct.
And that we have to work with the town and the warrant committee to know what our options are, and to make
that's
sure
what-
that we're not just kind of doing like the bare minimum bottom if we're able to have this.
But I think
That
that's
is
the
supposed to go to
conversation
schools.
Tuesday night, right? I mean, that's what we have that conversation about what our options are. I think that,
Right.
the selectmen and the warrant committee certainly have a handle on, what the process would be. I mean, I think it'd have to be a special town meeting or something else. So
Yeah.
I think that's what we got to talk through and see, because
Right.
I don't think anyone on the town side wants to take money that's earmarked to the schools. I've never gotten
No,
that.
I don't think so
Never
either.
gotten that indication that anyone wants to do that.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just that the way the timing is so off, you got to figure out
is.
a way how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no, again, there's no way that we could predict any of the things that have happened to us in the last year, and so whether we had gone with a 1/12 budget, or if we had, we just couldn't know. There are so many things that have been pushed off, or the Chapter 70 money, and the fact that it wasn't decreased, it was level funded, is a gift. It's a wonderful thing.
I mean, I would also
And-
add, there are towns out there that went in a 20% reduction,
Yeah.
25% reduction. So this is
Yeah.
not
I
just
appreciate the
reduction.
conservatism around only going 10.
Right.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's not going to be like a magic wand solution to any of this. My feeling is in the end, and please correct me, Michael or Jeff or anybody else, it's going to be kind of a cobbled together solution. We could have this beautiful stimulus package that comes right to the schools, and then there is Chapter 70 money, and perhaps we are able to then kind of restore some of the things that we had to cut off of that 10%, or I mean, I think that's discussions, but right now that seems like a beautiful vision, but not necessarily the reality we're looking at right now today on December 6th. So it's the 6th. Every day ends in a Y at this point, so I'm almost never sure. But do you guys have any thoughts, any
Again,
ideas?
I asked just the basic question. I look at it, I see 1,092,000 that, was not in our budget, that we're going to have to, to me, that means sometime around April, I don't know, Michael, maybe, we'd model it out. We're at risk, right? Like, so, I know we're going to have to continue to work. I think it's a great idea if we start reviewing it monthly.
Mhm.
I totally hear, like, yeah, there's somehow we need to come together, but I'm just looking at, like, these are the things, this is what I look at. I see, well, we have a major gap coming down the
Yeah.
pipe. And we don't have what I see, the line items that make up the gap are essential items in order to provide a safe and acceptable education for our kids. And, safety for our teachers and everyone else. So I'm trying to oversimplify, but that's how I look at it. I'm like, all right, well, we're going to.
Well, this is the other part of this, Tim. This is part of the process, right? We have to identify that problem as soon as possible, which we're doing, which Michael and Jeff have been communicating to us right out of the gate, about our monthly burn rate above our budgetary stance to get school open. We're getting immense pressure from the Department of Education to get our kid back into school from a state perspective. And obviously we want our kids back in school, and heard loud and clear from our, many of our folks in town that they want their kids in school too.
We all want our kids in school. We just want to be
right.
safe. Yeah. And we need to follow.
And we've heard loud and clear, and clear that it has to be done safely. Like we've heard loud and clear from folks. That's why I shop in the Shaws in Medway now, by the way. So not that I don't want to talk to folks in the supermarket, don't get me wrong. But I think this is just part of the process we have to go through. Make the time awareness is key here, and just continue to communicate that that awareness and what this money is going to. So the line items is important, the impact is important, and what we need to move forward is also important. And I think it's not a gargantuan amount, although it's a large amount. And I'm hopeful, like we all are, for future stimulus. So hopefully something will happen if we're not bickering over mail-in voting too long. I think it's inevitable, but as soon as we get past that, hopefully we can refocus on what needs we have. I think the governor's doing a great job of trying to keep the towns, whole for as long as he can, obviously. So without having to take drastic measures on our side. And I think that's the part we don't want to have to get to, is what are the drastic measures to come in within budget if we are forced to do so. And I think that's the what ifs, Tim, that you're referring to. Like, it gets to March and we don't have a solution. What's
our disaster scenario?
Right.
Yeah,
but knowing the nut.
Repairs now, move some of it up if we can.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
strategy. 1092, but that's going to double for this, once we hit 21. I know some of it's going to come down, but I'm just looking at it.
Well, knowing the delta, the rolling delta is extremely important. And I think that's the part we, will share with warrant and selectmen. They have to be aware as well, and it has to be on everyone's radar. And obviously the nuclear option is we have to make drastic cuts and change everything we're doing. So, and I don't think anybody wants to go backwards at this point. So
I would just say too, that strategically as a community, you want to think about the fact that we're going out for bonding, hopefully, fingers crossed, next fall. Right. So if you have, a healthy free cash in there, and stabilization account, your bond rating is going to be better and your interest rate will be lower. So I think, looking at it from a long-term aspect too, of how this money gets allocated to or not to the schools is something to really consider as well.
Right. Yep. I actually very much agree with you on that one too, Jeff. There is health in having that within the town's coffers that perhaps these get redistributed afterwards. But it's a pickle. Nobody has any great answers this year. And I know that, across the town, they're struggling as well. I've already seen a lot of, I've been to the doom and gloom meetings this year, and they're doomier and gloomier than usual, which is something to say. But we'll just, we have to keep on plugging, because it doesn't help not to know. So anyone else have any input, any questions, thoughts about this? Was there anything that we wanted to return to? I remember there was something we put a pin in. No, I think we kind of covered that. Anyone? Or should we
I'm looking forward to that Tuesday meeting, because I think collectively we can have honest conversations and hopefully come up with some creative solutions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I hope so too.
Thanks for organizing that one.
All right. Okay. So this is the, do we feel comfortable leaving this conversation at this point? That we've got some marching orders and, yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for putting us together.
Yeah,
I think it
thank
was,
you.
Very timely. We have a,
I just thought I would take this opportunity, since we seem to be in the, I don't know if you've noticed, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that the ways that we have communicated and had to run our meetings and the fact that you have a slightly green chair. I think this is a really good idea at this point to kind of really understand how within the pandemic, what has been working for us in terms of how we conduct meetings, what hasn't been working, and then really look at our policies as of right now, where they stand pre-COVID, and if there are any adjustments that we feel we want to make in the immediate to relate specifically to COVID meetings until the time of the end of the emergency declaration. And then obviously Tim is working with the MASC on the policy kind of review. This might be a good time, though, to be really thinking about how we want to conduct meetings going forward. I noticed that the last time we looked at how school committee meetings are run in terms of policy was in 2015. And we've just changed significantly in how we run meetings, how we take feedback, how we're able to kind of reach people technology wise. I would love to be able to continue something along the kind of Zoom model after COVID. But for right now, one of the things that I've noticed is that many of our meetings end up that are not being, in the effort to try to get as much feedback as possible, we end up losing focus and not conducting our business efficiently. And that's actually supposed to be kind of the mandate of a school committee meeting, is that it is a business meeting for the business of the district, and that the open meeting laws define participation not as necessarily offering feedback across all kind of back and forth, but participation is defined as having adequate ability to watch and observe. At the same time, we live in a small town and people are passionate about their kids, as are all of us. So I'm wondering if we want to think about how we want to run meetings while we are almost exclusively on Zoom, and how we get that feedback and how we are able to do that efficiently. Right. So does anyone, I guess first thing that I would probably ask you to do, if you want to pull it up on your screens, because I'm not actually sure I know how to screen share yet, is there are a couple of things that specifically relate to how we do school committee meetings. And this is literally what the actual language is. Some things around the agenda format. Some things around the rule of order. And actually, I think that this is kind of important, because one of the things that many school committees do, because they are more a part of a, they're more of kind of like a very hierarchical kind of large board in many cities and larger towns than ours, is that they are very, very official about kind of following Robert's Rules of Order. However, our current policy, and one I think that has worked for us in terms of being able to have open conversations as much as possible, and this is I'm sorry, I'm obviously running down at the end of the night.
Hey,
But
Jess,
this is policy number, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just wondering, are you trying to tweak an existing policy, or is this sort of like a pandemic amendment?
I think I'm
Oh.
actually not interested in tweaking any of the policies right now in terms of long-term, because I think that that's a discussion we should have once we have more flexibility.
Okay,
Um,
so this is an interim sort of as
But this
we're
is kind of an interim conversation about how we feel we can run what is an enormous amount of business that comes through the district. We are meeting almost twice as often as we have.
right.
And those meetings are going for 3, occasionally 4 hours. So how do we make sure that we are getting the best feedback that we can from the community to the people that we serve? And get that feedback, to be perfectly honest with you, respectfully, and in a way that does not distract us from the business at hand. Because I think that the more, I think feedback is incredibly necessary. I think it is incredibly helpful, and it does frequently steer our decisions as much as possible. But at the same time, you know, having people on the chat saying, this is a scam and things like that just isn't really necessarily something that's helpful in terms of how we manage our business, right? The business of the district and how we best serve kids. And we've always been fairly informal, right? And in fact, within our policies, it says that members of the school committee shall arrive at an agreement as to how the committee will carry on its business. And in a small group such as this body, there's merit in permitting discussion of a subject without the making of a prior motion and in dispensing with other formalities so this committee's deliberations can be expedited. Therefore, the conduct of the committee business shall be informal, although procedures required by law and policy shall be observed. And there are certain things that we have to do to open meetings and close meetings and stuff. But how do we incorporate public comment? And I really want your ideas about this. How do we incorporate public comment in a way that is most useful to the running and the efficient running of the district, while also allowing people to feel as though they have a voice? Right now, the way that our policy, oh, go ahead. Who's gonna?
No, so I kind of look at it as prior to moving to Zoom,
Mhm.
you had at the beginning of the meeting, if there was other
Mhm.
topics not on the agenda, you could
Right.
approach Mike and say what they were. And,
Right.
you know,
And I
we
think
never
that
really
that's,
had to impose it. I would just say that the default is doing that, right? We
Well,
open up
you
the
know-
chat if there's a reason, like we're gonna have like when we did the mascot this summer, sometimes there's a reason to do it.
right. And
But
those
I
are
would
kind of
say-
open. Yeah.
Moving back, if I see a chat in other work meetings, I use it. I use it a lot, but I might be asking the same question that 6 people in front of me already asked. And
Right.
you know, it's not always productive.
And then it becomes very frustrating.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah,
receptive.
for the
I just thought,
constituents as well.
hey, that, you know, there is a little bit more to approach the mic and say what you want to say. We
Right.
have great accessibility through different emails and whatnot, and we welcome it. But that would be my immediate, like, hey, why do we have to have the chat all the way through?
Right.
You know, if it becomes distracting and not necessary, like we always want feedback. I'm not saying it, but run it the way it was. Be fairly binary. This is when we take it, approach it, you can speak. And for the topics that are appropriate, when we all agree we need to do that, usually you know it in the agenda, we might open it up for certain areas. That's just one human being. I'm not, you know, that's just one idea that might make life a little bit easier.
No, I
Yeah,
mean,
and think,
I
like, the last meeting, there was a slight tweak in that, and I thought that was effective. You know, if people
Mhm.
wanted to speak, they raised their hand, we invited them over, and that, you know, that was a great way. And as Tim said, if there's a topic where we're going to open it up to public feedback or comments, we should do so. I do think, yes, it is a business meeting. However, I think the spirit and intention of our meetings have always been to be inclusive of our community because
Mhm.
their voices are important. So I think
right.
we need to continue, in my opinion, to continue in that spirit.
Yeah.
But
I
maybe
would never want to have a meeting in which we had no public comment whatsoever. But what one of my concerns is that actually, as we're sitting here and speaking, we have this policy that actually does not correspond with the way that we have traditionally run meetings. And I remember talking about this a couple of years ago. I don't think Leo, Megan, or Tim were on the committee at the time, but we were talking about the way that we have where we have public comment or public input, that kind of, you know, like that we have it at the top of the agenda. Our policy has us actually doing that at the conclusion of all discussion items. And at the time, the chair said that, you know, well, this is simply precedent. This is just the way it goes, and we've done it this way for so long. And that's, so then that then replaces the policy. But I think that given that we tend to be held to a higher standard than many other boards in town, I think it would be useful to us, at least during COVID, and then as Tim works with MACS, that we really kind of drill down on where and when and how we insert public participation, right?
well, you as the
So-
chair, so when we have the agenda, I mean, could
Mhm.
we, you know, you have public input, you know, anything
Mhm.
that's not mentioned in the agenda, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
And then
et
within
cetera,
the
et cetera, yeah.
within the agenda, beforehand, you determine where you're gonna accept public input, and that's right in the agenda, so people know it doesn't have to be discussed. It's just out there and it's
Mhm.
posted 48 hours beforehand. You know, that
Okay.
could really work.
Now, that's something that we would actually, so that the issue around that, and tell me, Jeff, if I'm wrong, I might be thinking slowly because it is getting late for me. At some point I saw in here that in order to, I actually think that's a good idea. And I'm sorry, it's welcome to the workshop part of this where we don't really go from thing to thing laterally.
I think Jess
If
is,
we are to change agenda items while we are in the meeting, we have to vote on it. So I think we've always been pretty informal about saying, I think we're going to flip this, and then we've never really kind of voted. But if we're being held to our policy, which I do think is kind of outdated at this point, we have to change. We have to vote on that, which is clunky. It's possible, but clunky. But if we're able to insert where we would take public comment, and then we do that, and this is just me thinking, and then we do that by with video, much as like we are kind of virtually approaching a podium. And that is a certain period of time, which we are allowed to, you know, the chair is able to, and with a vote, able to stipulate. Is it with a vote or just able to stipulate a certain, how much time? Tim, you really feel like, can I just work this out for a second? Because I can see you really want to talk.
No, I was doing this. I was saying, I think
Okay.
it's 3 minutes. I'm sorry, that really sincere. I was
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah, yeah.
I think it's 3 minutes, and that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken,
So-
it's 3 minutes.
I mean, there's a, you know, but also within COVID, we also have to have that 3-minute kind of waiting period too. That's my understanding from Andy when Mary spoke to him last week. That we have to kind of open that, whatever public input we're going to do, we have to open it on the video for 3 minutes and literally just sit there for 3 minutes, which I'm willing and happy to do. But anybody up until the time of the end of that 3 minutes can then comment, and then they would not have, so like if somebody came in at 2:59, they could then comment for 3 minutes, right? So I think it's probably a good idea to set these kind of discussion points or input points in the agenda. I kind of like that idea. What do the rest of you think? I'm missing Megan right now. Why am I not seeing you? Oh, there you are. Okay. No, it's my screen, not yours.
You
I think I know what you're asking. Oh,
Okay.
go ahead, sorry,
So clarify for me what I'm asking, because I think I know what I'm asking, but tell me what you understand.
me?
No, you or you. Leo said, I think I
Oh.
know what you're asking. So
Okay, well,
Megan, you ask your question first. Good.
yeah.
I have no question. I was just gonna say that I agree with Anna Mae's just pretty simple suggestion to highlight on the agenda itself. We'll be taking public input, maybe at our next meeting or whenever it is that we formalize this amendment, that when we ask for public input, we will wait 3 minutes and we'll look for someone to raise their hand. And then we will call them over, as that would be the way that we would be running the meeting pre-COVID, and that we just leave the chat disabled.
I am good with leaving the chat disabled. I had
It's
one
my
person
understanding
who,
that no one really that's on that chat has any desire to zoom in and speak to our faces. That's just my gut feeling.
no, I don't know that it's necessarily true, but there are some of them who are,
About 50%.
like it's an impulsive kind
I
of.
hope that 50% of those did not want to say that to our faces. That's just put it out there.
So can I just, a couple reactions, Jess?
Please, yes.
So my first
You've
reaction
been doing this a whole lot longer than I have.
is I think that you're advocating for 4 o'clock school committee meetings, which I'm very happy about. So thank you for that. You keep talking about it being late right now. So I think if you want to do a 4 o'clock meeting, I would support that 100%. I guess it begs the question, and I've talked to a lot of colleagues about this, is that when you're in a business meeting for school committee in a brick and mortar, if we ever get back to that, people aren't firing things at you the entire time. Like that,
Right.
that doesn't happen. So you conduct business, you do it in a way that is appropriate, professional, and according to Robert's rules. You don't have things flying up in your face constantly in a Q&A. You just don't have that access to anyone, and it's distracting. It's often inappropriate. And I feel like that turning that off makes total sense. I mean, I feel like if you give folks an opportunity to zoom in and when they raise their hand, I mean, that's inclusive as you want, right? You're going to have an opportunity to speak like you would at a meeting where they could raise their hand or go to the podium and state their name and address and do it. It's like we need to get back to some kind of normalcy, right? And that's normalcy. People firing questions at you while you're trying to talk, or nasty grams in some cases while you're trying to talk, isn't a real school committee meeting.
It's no different than a 5th grade teacher saying to her class, stay off the chat while I'm trying to teach you this lesson, and I've seen that happen,
No different than a real
because it's
school
distracting to
building
the
meeting.
kids trying to listen, to the people running the class.
I mean, no one conducts business that way, right? So we have a few people that want to do that. I mean, I know on the chat at the school building committee at the last meeting, one person did like 26 different things on there. It's like, come on. I mean, that's not how public business is conducted. And I think if you give people the opportunity to speak when they raise their hand, like they would in a real meeting, a normal meeting, if we were in person, that is highly appropriate and fair.
Okay.
And you're not shutting anyone down.
All right.
It's just
So,
structure.
right. And I do think that the structure is necessary. I mean, I do remember coming off of the meeting last week and kind of looking around, and I think we all were like, wow, that felt like we got something done. Although, you know, I then got feedback from somebody saying, hey, you guys don't do anything. So, but those are open meetings. There are meetings that we need to have to be able to actually discuss something with each other, all in person. We don't get that opportunity except when we do meet. So, and so we need to be able to manage our time in that way. At the same time, I don't want to completely cut out other ways of having people communicate with us. So obviously a lot of people have been using email to contact us lately. And I think that's a great improvement in the last 2 years that we, you know, now have these Medfield email addresses that we're not working within our, working within our personal emails. I also think that obviously we all take informal feedback, but I think that there are opportunities for us that perhaps we should schedule over time in which we can have some of those more open feedback kinds of opportunities where perhaps we don't necessarily turn on the chat, but we're having open feedback through the Google Doc that we did, for instance, at very specific times about very specific issues that are so important to our kids into our district, particularly around right now. So right now, for instance, Jeff, you've been conducting a lot of research on kind of opportunities and attitudes around how, you know, can we change elementary schedules? What does that look like? How much can you tolerate? What do you know? And you've been getting some pretty honest and actually very thorough feedback from those, right? So are there areas that we feel like, is there any need we feel that we are not meeting if we have a big topic and we don't do something like the Dale Street Forum where we just did chat for 3 hours, you know, like.
So just one suggestion that I was going to actually talk to you about, Jess, but we're in a workshop, so I can just tell everybody about it. So Thought Exchange has an option for us to use in a meeting where we can put out, you can have a link, a QR code, whatever, a website. You put that out to the people that are at the meeting, and you ask the question, you know, what is your feedback on whatever it is? You pick the topic, okay? And you sit for 5 minutes and you ask people to put their thoughts in and everyone else to rank. At the end of 5 minutes, you stop and then you deal with those top 5, 6, 7 items. Because what we've seen, and I think some of the things that are pretty unproductive on these Q&As that we do, is that when someone asks a question at 7:05, and then someone tunes in at 7:45 and asks the same question, and then someone tunes in at 9:15 and asks the same question. It's really unproductive to keep going back to the same thing over and over again. Whereas
people feel really invalidated when you say, I think we answered that.
Right.
I think we answered that, but there's literally only so many times you can
So
answer
there's a way you can use Thought Exchange that it's a live thought exchange, just like we do with the survey, and it just breaks down, you know, the top 5, 6, 7, 10, whatever you guys decide, and we address those, and the rest of them we say we can address at a different time. But it keeps it focused, it keeps it organized, and quite frankly, it keeps it on the things that the most people want to deal with. It's not just some outlier thing that, you know, that someone saw. It's really that if people say, if, you know, everyone gives it 5 stars, and baby, that's what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about something out of left field that an outlier talks about that most people don't care about. We're really focused in, and that's the beauty of Thought Exchange. It's not the loudest voice. It's where people are concerned, and you focus in on that. So I think that's something we should consider too. Maybe in December, doing something like that, trying that out. Yeah. It might be a good exercise.
Other members of the committee, please pipe up.
I think we're on the
Mhm.
right track on finding a way to structure meaningful feedback. I feel video and audio is totally appropriate, and the Q&A as it's been used with us right now, not 100% effective for the most part. Like the bigger open forums, I think it was counterproductive for us because we had so many duplicate questions, and I think the questions were good, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think people felt like they were getting their questions answered because we couldn't sit there and read 213, 14 questions.
Although
But at
God
the-
knows I tried.
Oh yeah, and then at the same time, they still want a question answered, and it was a
Yeah.
very stressful time. So absolutely not. I mean, we go back to pre-COVID. We talk about pre-COVID. Any basic meeting, how many attendees did we typically have? So unless there was a reason for people to be there, and it's generally if something's really wrong, and then we know they're there, and then we're gonna let them speak so we can hear it. So, and I think doing that on Zoom in a similar way will allow people to be heard like loud and clear, and we can hear their voice, and it's not muddled by just a text message or that Q&A message either, right? Because as things come off in text, they can't. We don't hear the inflection of the voice. We don't see their face.
Right.
And hear the passion. And I think that's
Right.
part of the message. And I think that's missing in the Q&A part of everything. So I think I agree with, just, having our formal open sessions like we used to, except they may go longer because our participation is through the roof, right?
Which is great. I mean, I never
Right.
want to leave Zoom entirely because of that. I think that we've gotten
Right.
fantastic feedback. So much of it has been so helpful. And I love that people are able to like be here, right? I get really tired of talking to an empty room.
Well, and we have the tech now to do it. Like we have the tech, and we've had tech before really, but now we have the know-how and the practice, right? We have the best practices.
Right.
Right.
When we can make that happen, we can stick an extra camera in the room or whatever if we have to, and put one of those LED screens up with the person that can zoom in and talk to us. So I think there's a lot of capabilities available to us as a result of being forced to practice this way. And that's the same for all of us in the world, right? Including education and what happens in the classroom moving forward and so on. So there's just a lot of that. And so on this, I think I agree with you, Jess, 100%. Just, whether we have to make some changes to our policy in our practice, I think that's just the way it needs to be.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I can
agree.
see this as a, oh,
Okay.
please, Tim.
No, I agree, and I'm glad to look at the policy. I mean, I don't, but I'm just saying, consistent to what we were doing before, it just happens to be through Zoom.
Right. So, so I actually do think that we probably would need to, just to, again, make sure that everybody knows, what we do. I mean, our policy manual is actually one of the most important parts of our job. And while we have been in the middle of trying to kind of update it, obviously, pandemics happen apparently, and it's slowed that process down some.
There's every 100 years or so, yeah.
Yeah, or I hope. So I think probably at this point, in order to be making the decisions we need to make and yet still getting the input, I would maybe propose that maybe Tim, you and I, or would think about coming up with some language for a COVID policy that would be temporary. And that way it actually allows us to kind of workshop the way meetings run the most efficiently. And then after the emergency order, perhaps that's when we evaluate how it's been going and what we would like to change and put into a more permanent policy. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? I mean, is that, obviously, if you have any feedback about that afterwards, or you have other thoughts, please, reach out
Jess,
to me, but.
It might make sense to check in with Dorothy Presser too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if is it necessary to create COVID policy? I suppose as Jeff said,
Well,
MASC.
there's an immediacy part to it. There's a part where I'd like to see how it goes. And, a policy, like a true policy change takes 2 readings, and it's laborious. And the way our meeting schedule goes right now, even if we were to put first reading on next Thursday, then I think our next meeting after that isn't until December.
Mhm.
And I expect that there would be feedback on it, and I'd certainly appreciate it from the public. I mean,
Yes,
a lot of policies we've passed lately have been pretty but I'd almost like kind of the opportunity to see what works best before we codify it permanently. Does that make sense?
But
I get that.
this is a temporary policy is what you're
So
suggesting.
this would be kind of a temporary policy in response to what we've seen over the period of time of COVID and how meetings might best work, making sure that we're giving people adequate opportunity to provide feedback on agenda items, but also just in general, because there are a lot of kind of generalized needs right now.
I suppose
And then
you
we're
have to
able to see how it,
reach
I'm
out
sorry.
to Dorothy and see if
Yeah.
if this exercise is necessary, or we just make the changes we've suggested and move forward.
okay, well, we can, why don't we put that on the agenda? I'm trying to remember how clogged up, not clogged up, but how packed the next agenda is. Because I think that we should probably talk about it within a regular meeting before and maybe Tim, you and I can put our heads together
I'll
on
review it.
some
Yeah,
language.
why don't we just, Jess, you and I can go one-on-one, like, and kind of think about if we were to shift it, review the policies that we have today, and is that outside of them? If it's not, great. If it is, and we can also check back with Mask if they have
Yeah.
something. But I'm.
Yeah,
I
so
just
we'll
worry
check.
about creating more work when it's really not necessary. You know what I mean? If this
I
is
hear you.
really, truly temporary, to expend this energy where we can expend energy elsewhere where it's more
I hear you.
pressing, I would just prefer to move down that lane. But so whatever, what Dorothy, I think getting advice would be great.
Yeah. Actually, it's Kelly. No, or
MAS.
not Kelly, Kathleen Kelly. So, all right.
Yeah, they were great
okay.
when we did
Yeah, they're
whatever
great.
the temporary ones we had to do in August. Megan, I think you were on it, but they were extremely helpful.
Oh,
We
for sure.
iterated, we
Yeah.
moved that very quickly. And, but I think it's a great idea. I think the workshop is appropriate to say, hey, you know what, are we doing these things the best way possible? And how can we tweak it? So, and I think what everyone's talked about, seems pretty like a good idea.
All right. So that's, I don't want to bite off much more than that right now. But I mean, obviously, we're going to kind of have to, at a certain point, start to realize that we do live in this world that moves forward, whether there's a virus out there or not. We're probably going to have to be thinking about some of these policies and doing some workshops around other parts of school committee business. Obviously, we probably want to be talking about some of our other stated goals and kind of get back on that track. We were doing pretty well there for a while, but then life happened. So, and we want to make sure that those start to move forward. But, all right. Does anybody have anything else that they want to bring up in terms of budget or in terms of policy, the two things that we've discussed tonight?
Yes, I'm just, the last comment, I mean, staying on that, we do, I think we talked briefly, at one point, I think it was the workshop year and a half ago. We had, the agenda and for the year, these are some of the major topics.
Right.
And
we do have that. Yeah.
And I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. We want to make sure we allocate the right amount of time to do some of the business we know that we're not getting to today. But I think we also have to recognize there is an enormous amount of work devoted to COVID and budget and whatnot, where, Anna Mae, I forget, you kind of wrote that at that time. There may have been 40 or 50 major topics. We might find that, hey, 20 of them may not be as relevant now as they were then, because
I think there are some.
So,
I think there are some that are extremely relevant, though, to COVID and have been kind of long seated concerns that we've had around how do we, as 5 volunteers with otherwise very busy lives, and restrictions around how we're able to communicate to our constituents in the best way possible. And I could definitely see that we probably need to take some time to figure that out, you know, because that is relevant to COVID, because it is something that is essentially tripping us all up right now. You know, as much as we try, it's very difficult to do in a coordinated way. And I think we need to spend some time really thinking about how we do that. So, I mean, do you agree with that, Tim? Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
That could be a topic
That's
of
the
a
whole-
future
that's the whole
workshop,
point.
or
Could be that thought exchange that Jeff talked about, but yeah, it's almost like, hey, they, you know, stack rank them. What are the ones that we know we have to do, right? And then we start putting them out there. But yeah, I agree, because there's some things falling through the cracks that we're not doing on purpose, but they are, that we have to do. And there might be some things on agendas that we say, hey, maybe we don't have to do that, right? And we just, so I think that's, you know, whether it's a one-on-one or a follow-up workshop like this, I think it is important to do.
okay. So we'll talk about that. But Tim, you and I will talk together this week and kind of figure out, and we'll talk to, Kathleen or whoever else we can wrestle up at MASC about kind of maybe the best way to go about this. So, okay. Hey, it's only been 2 hours and 7 minutes, and I think we're gonna wrap this one up.
We don't want to revisit Jeff's
One
4
thing.
o'clock request?
Yeah, no kidding. Let's revisit that one.
I would do that. I'd be there, but I think that, other people would not.
Have jobs.
Although, how was the Zoom attended at the high school today for the freshman Zoom at noon? I mean, I dialed in for a second, but then I got busy. I was hoping for the recording.
So just one, can I just add one thing? You
Yeah.
know, we've been updating our dashboard every Friday morning for COVID numbers, but the state did not release the town by town numbers tonight. They did a breakdown of every nursing home, I think, in the state and what their numbers are and compliance and all that. And they put in red on the first page that town by town will be released tomorrow. So just in case you get any feedback, we say it's going to be updated by 10, but if we don't have the data from the state, we can't update it, but it will be updated at some point tomorrow.
Okay, doke.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So do I have a motion to adjourn this workshop, or is there anything else we want to talk about?
So moved.
To adjourn.
So moved. So Leo, and do I have a second?
Anime.
All right, Anime. All right, so can I have a roll call, please? Megan Glenn.
Aye, and thank you, Michael and Jeff, for all the
Yes, thank you so
information.
much. And
for
Andrea.
all of the members of the warrant committee that came in to watch. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
Yes.
Still, and some town employees too, which I really appreciate. Thank you. Okay, and Leo.
Yes. Aye.
Hi, Tim.
Aye.
Anime.
Aye.
Jessica Riley. I will probably see you far too soon.
Ciao. Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. And thanks for your folks who are here.